Hi, it's Carly McAvoy. I wanted to help you with this weekly activity frequency distribution tables. There's just a lot of vocabulary in it. There's nothing that's terribly difficult. Whenever I give you a assignment like this, I try to put videos in there so you can watch the videos inside there. You don't have to come and find this video. These are classes, these are scores, and these are the classes. So class from 50 to 59, 60 to 69, and so forth. Every class has to be the same width, and you find the width by taking the lower value of one class and subtracting the lower value of the one below it. So the class width here would be 60 minus 50, or 10. Or you could say 70 minus 60, which is 10, 80 minus 70, which is 10, 90 minus 80. They all should be the same width. And it should happen on the same side as well. 99 minus 89 is 10, 89 minus 79 is 10, and so forth. So that's how you can look and see the class width. You don't subtract the numbers within the class, but the numbers from one class to the next. And then over here is the number of students. That's just the frequency. So there's 2 students in this group and 4 in that group, and so forth. If this is our first class, then we have the lower limit of the first class is 50, and the upper limit of the first class is 59. So here's one that asks you for the lower limit of the third class. You would find the third class and find the lower limit there, and the upper limit of the fifth class, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 classes there altogether. The frequency, which is over here. Then it asks you for the midpoint, and the midpoint is if you add these two terms together, 2 values together, and divide by 2. Midpoint is just an average of the lower limit and the upper limit. So add those 2 together, divide by 2, and you'll find the midpoint for any one of these classes. And when you find the midpoint, you're going to find the midpoints are also 10 apart, because that's how far apart the classes are, the width of the class. Now the boundaries are a little more confusing. The boundaries are the numbers that are halfway between one class and the next point in the next class. So here for 89, what is halfway between 89 and 90? Well, that would be 89.5. That would be the boundary of between these 2 classes. So you're always just looking to see what is the halfway point between those 2. And then if you ask for the boundary of something that there's nothing the next one, you're just going to say, well, what did I do for this one? For this one, it was 89.5, or you added 0.5 to that, right? So, oops, here we go. If it was freehand, if it was 89.5, then the boundary of the next one is going to be 99.5. They're going to be 10 apart, just like everything else. And the previous one would be 79.5, and so forth. So it's just the halfway point between that. So at the very end, you add 0.5, and at the very beginning, you would subtract 0.5, because that's what you're doing on either side. So this last one, 99.5, would go from 89.5 up to 99.5. So the boundaries, there's one on the left side and there's one on the right side for each class, and these 2 numbers are always going to match. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. I don't want that anymore. The second question asks you to find the class width from a data set. And so first of all, we want to find the class width, and then we want to set up the 5 classes. I put the first number here. First, you'd have to look at your data set. And I can tell you from this that the lowest value, or the minimum value in the data set, is going to be 53, which is what it says up here. And then, oh, this class width from the data set is a video explaining that. Okay, so I thought it was the data set, but no, you don't need that, but you can watch the video if you want. All you're going to do to find the class width is divide you're going to subtract, let me write it down. You're going to subtract the maximum value, 184, minus the minimum value, which is 53, and then you're going to divide by the number of classes, and I told you to use 5 classes, so you're going to divide by 5. If you were doing 6 classes, you'd divide by 6. The other part about this formula is it has these braces around it, which means round up to the next highest value, that matches your data set. Your data set is whole numbers, so your answer has to be a whole number. So I don't know what this is, but let's say that we got 72.1. That should not be what it is, but I'm just throwing that out there as what if you did get 73.1, then your class width would be 73. So it doesn't say round like your normal rounding. It says round up to the next highest value. So 72.1, 72.002, anything more than 72, you're going to round up to that next higher value. And then that's going to be your class width. And it has to be 73 as a whole number because both your numbers given were whole numbers. And then once you know your class width, I'm going to make it easier on myself here for a second. Let's erase all that. Let's say that I found my class width to be 20, because that would be easy. It would have to be a whole number, I know, but so if it was 20, then I know if this is 53, the next one would be 73, and the next one would be 93. And I would just keep adding 20 all the way down. So once you find your class width, that goes here. And then what you do is you take your class width and you add it to that first number, which is the minimum number on your data set, and you keep adding all the way down. These are whole numbers, so the end of the last class is going to be one less than this, or 72. Then you can start adding 20 here. This is going to be 92. This is going to be 112. 20 apart, right? This is going to be 132. This is going to be 113. This is not your actual class width, is not 20, but I'm saying if it was, this is how you would do it. And then finally, I would add 20 again, and I would get 152. Now here's how I would know if I made a mistake. 133. I would know I make a mistake because my largest value is 184 and it's not included here. So obviously 20 is too small of a class width. You want to make sure that your value is included in your last class, your upper value. However, if you got 192 and you're like, whoa, that's bigger than my largest value, that's okay. This doesn't have to be your largest value. It has to make sure though that it's included in your final data set, in your final class, excuse me. So make sure when you find your class width and when you're done that all of these are equally spaced, have the same width, all of these have the same width, and your highest value is included in your class. It doesn't have to be this number though, and then this number is going to equal your least value. Okay, so then on to the next one. Question 3, minimum value is this, the maximum value is this. Find the class width using 3 classes. So this is the same problem, only I have given you something that's not whole numbers. So again, what you would do for this is you would take your 67.13 and you would subtract the lower value, which is 33.21, and you would divide by 3 because we want 3 classes, and then you would figure out what your answer is. Now let's say that this came out to be 9.723 or whatever it is. This would be 9.73. Our answer, class width, has to match the precision of the data. If we have 2 decimal values here, we need 2 decimal values there. So I would know that my class width would have to be something like that. I just totally made that number up. I'm not trying to give you the answers to your quiz here. But if that was the class width, then you would go back and say, okay, I'm starting with my minimum value, 33.21. 33.21 plus 9.73 is 42.94. What would the previous value over here be? It'd be one less hundred than that. So that would be 42.93. You would just take 1/100th off of that to find it. Then I would add the next value on, that would add 42.94 plus 9.73 to get this one. And I would keep adding down the 9.73 on this side to get that one. When I'm finished, I want to make sure that 67.13 is included in this last data set somewhere. It doesn't have to be the final value. All right, so it's just like the last one, except this is something to think about. And because that's, I think in this, yeah, in summer term, you don't do the third activity I think this is something that comes up in that third activity, but anyway, it's good to know anyway. So we'll get rid of that and go on to this one. So now we're talking about boundaries again, and we're talking about the midpoint. So the given the classes below, here's our classes right here. We want to find the midpoint of each class, and we want to find the upper and lower boundaries. This is a little bit confusing the way it's laid out here. It looks better in production, but anyways, post-production, not so good. So how to find the midpoint, all you're doing here is adding these two values together and dividing by 2. It's just an average of those two values in that class, and then whatever you get, put it here. Your midpoint may not have the same precision as your value. So this is 1/10, but when you divide by 2, it's possible to get something that's not, in this case, it's possible that your midpoint won't have the same precision. That's okay. For 2, it should have in most cases. Okay, and then lower and upper boundaries, again, we're talking about what is the halfway point between 19.6 and 19.7. The halfway point between those would be, this is the upper one we're talking about, the halfway point between 19.6 and 19.7 is 19.65. And that means that this one, when you do the next one, it's going to start with the same lower value. Those upper value from the previous one, lower value from the next one are going to match. Because when you make a histogram, they touch each other. That's why it bumps up against each other, and there's no gaps when you're doing histograms. And then for the upper one, we're just going to say, well, what's halfway between 21.1 and 22.1 and 22.2, which again is just adding a 5 to the end of that to get there. So then you want to come back here and say, well, what would be this one? There's nothing to look at, but you realize that what we're doing here is we're subtracting 0.05 on the left, and we're adding 0.05 on the right. That's what we're doing all the way down. So we added 0.05 to get 19.65. We subtracted 0.05 to get 19.65 here. So we would be subtracting the 0.05 here, and we would be adding it here. So when you get to the very last and the first, you have to think about it. Then they're asking you, what's the class width down here at the bottom? Remember, the class width would be the value for one class, 19.7, minus the previous one, which is 17.2. Do that subtraction, you're going to find the class width. That should stay the same all the way down. Okay. Question 5, here we have this data, and we're going to go in and create a histogram in GeoGebra. You can also use Excel if you want. So we want to find the class width here. We want to find the 6 classes, and then you want to go and get a histogram in GeoGebra. So on a piece of paper that you're going to submit, it can be a Word document or a PDF, you're going to show me the class width calculation that you did. You're going to show me the 6 classes, and then you're going to, underneath that, have cut and pasted the GeoGebra picture from GeoGebra from your graph. So it's not that bad to find data to find this in GeoGebra. Let me first tell you, we want to find our class width. We're just going to know that our class width is going to have 1 decimal point because our data has 1 decimal. So you're going to find the very greatest value, which looks like 44.9 to me, and you're going to subtract 17.7, the highest value minus the lowest value, and then divide by the number of classes, which is 6. And then whatever you get, you round up to the next highest value that has a 1/10 in it. So I don't want to do this for you. I want you to think about it a little bit, but I want to kind of help you. And then the 6 classes, you start with 17.7, and then once you have your 17.7 down, you're going to add your class width, whatever it is, and that's going to give you your next value here, and then your next value here, and your next value here, and your next value here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 classes. And then remember, to find the second half, you just subtract 1/10. So just saying, like, let's say this was 23.4, then subtracting 1/10 would give you 23.3. I just made those numbers up. That's not the right answer, but it should go that way. And when you finish, 44.9 should be included in this last data set over here. Even if it's not the very last number, it should be included. Okay, so that's finding the class width and the classes. That has to be included on your document somewhere. How did you get it? And then you're going to go into GeoGebra, and I have a video right here of creating a histogram in GeoGebra. So I think that we'll just let you do that with that instead of me using this data. So follow that to get in there. And I think that's everything you need to be successful with this. It did go a little long, but I think it's going to be helpful. All right, have a fantastic day. I'll see you next time.